Considering how many Christmas specials come out every year, and most of the time aren't very good at that, it kind of makes sense that very few would manage to stand the test of time. But one of those that has managed to do it, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, is still considered an enduring classic that children and adults alike enjoy watching every year at Christmas time. But for those not familiar with the special, it might prompt them to ask what it is that makes the Grinch stand out so much. And today, I would like to try and answer that question. What is it exactly that makes the Grinch the beloved holiday classic that it is today? And obviously there are going to be spoilers ahead, so in case you really haven't seen it yet, you probably should click off this video and come back after you have. Okay, so to start with a brief history lesson, Dr. Seuss wrote How the Grinch Stole Christmas as a response to the rapid commercialism that had come to surround the holiday. He hated it so much, in fact, that it was even said that he partially modeled the Grinch after himself, channeling his annoyance at people forgetting what the holiday was really about in the character. The Grinch at one point even claims that he's put up with Christmas for 53 years, which was exactly how old Dr. Seuss was when he wrote it. Now, after the book proved to be extremely popular, even by Dr. Seuss's incredibly high standards, naturally talks of making it into a special started circulating. Dr. Seuss proved very hesitant, however, as he had had many bad experiences with Hollywood in past adaptations of his works over the years, and naturally wasn't too keen to potentially go through it all over again. However, famed Looney Tunes animator and writer Chuck Jones, who had loved Seuss's book and had been a friend of his for years, kept pestering him until he finally agreed to let Jones do a 30-minute animated special based off his book. It was even Seuss that wrote all the lyrics to the songs, and especially You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, as none of them appeared in the original book. Other deviations from the book, however, came directly from Chuck Jones, and these included making the Grinch green, as he's white in the original book, as well as putting a greater emphasis on his misdeeds, and all around making it clear that he's a huge jerk whose heart is indeed too small, and also adding in some of Jones' trademark slapstick. And another decision Dr. Seuss actively argued against was the casting of Boris Karloff as the Grinch, as he was afraid his reading would be too scary for children, which admittedly wasn't an unwarranted concern, as Karloff had been an actor associated with the horror genre for 35 years at that point, and had appeared in many decidedly unfamily-friendly movies, with him sometimes managing to scare the pants off of adults. But in the end, Karloff was kept in as the voice of both the Grinch and narrator, and was only replaced for You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch at his own request, as by his own admission, he wasn't a good singer. And the final result is what many regard as one of the greatest Christmas specials ever made. And not only did Boris Karloff prove not to be too scary for the part, but has become by many the definitive voice of the Grinch, to the point that any other voice as either him or the narrator inevitably lives in his shadow. But even apart from Karloff's perfect performance, it's still pretty easy to see why so many people love this special. The marriage of Dr. Seuss's whimsy and Chuck Jones' humor and slapstick are honestly a match made in heaven, and help make the special very entertaining. And not to mention, when you really look at it, most of the special plays out in the exact opposite fashion as a normal Christmas special. Because instead of jolly Santa Claus happily going from house to house giving people presents, we have an evil, hairy jerk gleefully stealing the presents from everybody's houses. And all the while his decidedly un-Christmas-like theme song plays in the background for most of it. You have to admit, if nothing else, this is certainly a different Christmas special. But if you ask me, it's the ending that's the real clincher for most people. Having successfully stolen all of the Who's presents and ready to drop them off a cliff, the Grinch expects them all to start crying in complete despair, and absolutely relishes in seeing it. Instead, however, all the Who's come outside and celebrate that Christmas has come anyway. And as the Grinch himself points out, all their presents, all their decorations, everything that physically represents Christmas is gone. And they're still happy and celebrating regardless. And that's when the Grinch finally has his epiphany. In the words of old Dr. Seuss himself, maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. There are so many TV specials, so many movies, so many commercials that try to get that same point across. And Dr. Seuss and this special managed to pull it off so effectively in just one sentence. Everything from the Grinch's truly heartfelt smile to Boris Karloff's perfect reading, to the brilliance in which it drives its point home, are all done in a manner that simply cannot be topped. And having realized the true meaning of Christmas, the Grinch, now a changed man, brings back all of the Who's stolen stuff and happily celebrates Christmas alongside them, now understanding that there's more to it than just material possessions, and is happy to embrace that. Now, what's my point with all of this? That Dr. Seuss wrote the book in the first place to get that simple message across. That Christmas is about a lot more than presents and other physical items. That those things are meant to be a reminder of why we celebrate Christmas, and not the reason for the holiday in the first place. That Christmas is ultimately about something more important than all of that, and is worth celebrating for that alone. And it's the fact that he's able to get this point across so effectively that I believe has made How the Grinch Stole Christmas such an enduring classic over the years. The fact that most are likely to agree with the Grinch the first time they watch it, that the Who's will be extremely upset about what he did, but instead, they still celebrate regardless because Christmas is still worth celebrating that much, regardless of anything else. And then the fact that the Grinch, who up until that point had been nothing but a miserable, petty jerk who hated Christmas more than anything, could suddenly find such happiness and fulfillment in the thought that there's more to the holiday than what he thought, is apt to make somebody with even a little bit of a heart feel something special. Now, of course, as I said earlier, the early parts of the special with the Grinch stealing everything and complaining about the noise definitely go a long way in making that ending have the emotional punch that it does. And that's honestly where the genius of Dr. Seuss's story comes in. And Chuck Jones was able to translate that story so effectively that, even with his added humor, the moral at the end still has all the weight that it does of the book, and maybe even more so. Because in the end, it's a lesson worth teaching and reminding people. It's just that most either don't know how to deliver it or come across as insincere. But because of how passionately Dr. Seuss already felt about the subject, on top of already being a talented writer in the first place, it allowed him to deliver that moral more effectively than most. And it's for a similar reason that A Charlie Brown Christmas works so well and is just as beloved. Because it not only fit the tone of Charlie Brown to a T, but it was a message that Charles M. Schulz also believed in, and thus knew how to get his point across in the most emotionally satisfying way possible. But getting back to the Grinch, the point is that unlike the Green Menace himself, there's really nothing not to like about this special. It's got everything a Christmas special should have. Humor, heart, catchy songs, and most of all, an important moral delivered in the most effective way possible. That Christmas does, perhaps, mean a little bit more. And sure, it may not have Santa Claus himself, but in this particular case, the Grinch proving to be the anti-Santa Claus and undoing all of the work of Saint Nick only helps the special be all the more memorable, and as I mentioned earlier, helps make the ending that much better. So to put it simply, this special took the already brilliant book and made it into arguably one of the most perfect Christmas specials ever made. And it's for this reason that I believe no other version of the book was or will ever be as beloved or successful as the original. Because this special simply adapted the book that perfectly, to the point that no other adaptation of it could ever hope to recapture the magic and heart of those iconic 30 minutes. Alright, I think I've made my point quite clear. So now I'd like you to tell me, do you believe that How the Grinch Stole Christmas is one of the best Christmas specials ever made, and that the reason for that pretty much comes down to its perfectly adapting Dr. Seuss's book and getting his main point across so effectively, or do you believe it's overrated? Please let me know in the comments below. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate all of it, and I hope to see you all next time.